what I want to talk about is what if our stress was magnified or caused within problems inside our body chemistry, and what if it could be altered or changed or improved through diet and nutrition? Just before I came here today, I actually had a woman who, after doing what I told her to do, said, "Boy, has my stress ever improved? I have far less stress." And I asked her, "What has changed?" And she said, "Well, I don't know. I haven't changed my husband. I haven't changed my work. I haven't changed my job is the same. I still drive the same car with the same problems, the same commute, but I feel so much better." So what has happened is her resilience and her coping capacity has changed. And that's what, I'm a chemist, and that's what I want to talk about tonight, is chemistry of coping. The reality is those inside stressors are by far and above the biggest killers. They're actually, not only are they stressful, but they're actually also the biggest killers. And these stressors, these inside stressors, are actually something that you control. They're things that you eat, they're your environment, they're your exercise, the air and water you breathe. So these things are actually within your control. And after 30 years of doing this, many people are completely unaware of this. And a very quick and simple example of this is a woman. Again, I don't have to, a very recent example from last week, who came to me and told me she had tremendous amount of stress in her life, and she had terrible fibrocystic breasts, just awful, just terrible. And she'd been suffering with these for 20 years. But I also determined, based on a simple questionnaire, that she was drinking 10 to 15 cups of coffee per day. So the first statement I said was, "Are you aware that, first of all, that caffeine can cause fibrocystic breast problems?" She goes, "No, nobody ever told me this." And the next point, I'm saying that anybody drinking 15 cups of coffee per day is going to feel stressed, regardless of what their work is. So after she's off the caffeine, her breast problems of 20 years evaporate and go away. And again, her stress is dramatically improved. What we want is energy, sleep, libido, sometimes, great mood, no depression. We don't want to be craving food or sugar. We want to have mental clarity and focus. We want our brains to work. We don't want to have feelings of anxiety, overwhelmingness. We want less stress, more happiness. These feelings are actually regulated by these little molecules in your head called neurotransmitters. So what are these neurotransmitters? These simple neurotransmitters regulate how our brains work. There's approximately 40 neurotransmitters that are known, but the two most dominant are serotonin and dopamine. And serotonin is the neurotransmitter that kind of goes, I feel really good, let's relax. It's really important for stage 3 sleep, where there's restoration, there's healing, your immune system is working, your cancer-fighting system is working. It's a very important sleep. It relates to appetite control. It's important for anxiety control. Another important one is dopamine. And dopamine is the I feel great neurotransmitter. Let's do something. It's important for stage 4 sleep. It's the dominant neurotransmitter for REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, where the brain is highly active, forming new, and this is a sleep where the brain is forming new connections, where you're learning actually during your sleep. We used to always tell our parents that, I have to sleep. That's when I'm really learning. It's important for libido, sex drive, energy, again, appetite control and addiction control. And it's interesting, when we're born, we spend almost all our time in stage 3, stage 4 sleeps. And as we age and get older and older, we spend less and less time in stage 3, stage 4 sleeps. So it's really important to have as much of this stuff as possible. So what we got to know is what are the biological, chemical things that stress out those neurotransmitters. Well, here they are, and this is what I'm going to talk about tonight. High insulin, protein, amino acid deficiencies, medications and drugs, micronutrient deficiencies that stress out neurotransmitters, food intolerances, lack of exercise stresses out these systems, and hormones and hormone imbalance affect them as well. So let's get through them. How exciting. On the left side, we see all the things that are bad for serotonin and dopamine. On the top, you see how protein and amino acids form these chemicals and the resulting systems that are affected, and all the different nutrients that have been proven to be essential for forming and helping to form serotonin and dopamine. When I talk to people, the first thing I look at is issues surrounding insulin and blood sugar control. So high insulin, diabetes, obesity right now is the #1 risk factor of early death. So it's significant. And on this high insulin, obesity, and diabetes is the proven #1 risk factor for higher rates of cancer, heart disease, depression, low energy, lack of mental focus. And what I always tell people, the problem with diabetes is that you just don't wake up one morning and die. You really feel awful on your way there. Now, how do we know our insulin levels? Well, one of the simpler ways that is highly correlated to high insulin is your hip-to-waist ratio. So if you have a belly, you tend to, what that means is that you have a high insulin level. Insulin is a storage hormone. It stimulates weight in the middle. Again, this hip-to-waist ratio is one of the quickest things a doctor can do to measure your risk of, guess what again? Diabetes, death, risk of death from cancer, cardiovascular disease. It even correlates to risk of Alzheimer's disease. And of course, there's other diseases and health-related issues that correlate to it. Poor sleep correlates to it. Pain problems, absolutely. So the more of this you have, the more pain you have. All these chronic fibromyalgias and all these pain conditions totally correlates to this. Problems with mood, anxiety, again, libido. Often, generally, the bigger the belly, the less the sex, the less the sex. We'll keep it that way. So what do we do about it? Well, there's a wonderful study done at the University of Guelph. They know that, hey, high insulin is the biggest killer. So what they thought they'd do is let's look at what people eat for breakfast and see what happens to their insulin levels. Sounds like a good idea. What they found was very, very, very striking. What they found when they combined a coffee or caffeine beverage with a carbohydrate, that the insulin levels spiked so high that the conclusion was what people ate for breakfast was the cause of high insulin. So they're saying, holy cow, this insulin is so high and it's not coming down. This is the cause of high insulin, which of course is the cause of diabetes, blah, 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 blah. And this was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, the most prestigious nutritional journal with respect to this very important finding. So what do we have when I have people who come in? What do we have? Well, we have what I call the no protein at breakfast syndrome. So skipping breakfast or lacking protein makes blood sugar worse and contributes to weight gain. So what they did at the University of Guelph was they stopped the caffeine and used a protein-dominant protein, or mainly protein, approximately 25 to 30 grams, and they cut out the sugars. So the consequence was women who ate this, or men and women who did this, actually lost an average of 30 pounds just on this simple dietary modification, removing caffeine from the diet. And what we have, again, when I have women is that often they're on weight control or diets or gone through so many different things that they, when I ask them what they're doing, it's often the coffee, carb breakfast with salad for the lunch, with salad on the side, and perhaps with a little bit of salad for dinner. So salad is all over the place, but with insufficient protein. So what we use routinely when we have this finding is a very simple formula. You eliminate the caffeine in the morning, and you use a protein smoothie. The consequence of that is improvements of mood, energy, weight loss. I think we've had people just with these simple modifications lose 60 to 80 pounds without going through all kinds of dietary manipulation. So this is real. And what's so important is that insulin will dominate all your other hormonal chemistries. So what that means is that insulin will dominate hormone metabolism. It'll dominate testosterone. So a man who has high insulin, it'll affect his testosterone levels. It creates more estrogen dominance in a woman. And of course, this hip to waist ratio is one of the very preventable risk factors for breast cancer. Now, this is actually very important. One of the main issues that I deal with is women who come in, and actually just today I had two, who said, well, all this dietary stuff is very important, but I've gone through so many diets that it's ridiculous. But I can never stick to them, or I come back and gain all the weight back. And the answer to the question is, well, how come? Well, the reason is that I have sugar cravings that are unbelievable. I'm ready to chew on this table, or chew through the table if there was sugar on the other side. It's unbelievable. So how can I deal with this so-called diet if I have such terrible sugar cravings? So if you're a health professional, you have to know the causes of sugar cravings to help somebody. It would make sense. So the two causes of a sugar craving are high insulin. We already talked about one of the main causes. So that coffee carb or that caffeine is actually triggering sugar cravings. So high insulin triggers sugar cravings. The number two cause is low brain levels of serotonin and dopamine. So when the brain is actually low in serotonin and dopamine, it actually craves for more energy. And you're trying to have to feed it. And what you're feeding it is sugar, but it never really works, does it? So how do you increase serotonin and dopamine? That's the question, isn't it? So if it's causing all these problems with these mood issues and is creating sugar cravings, is sabotaging appetite control, how do you increase it? Well, the first thing that you have to understand is the chemistry again. So serotonin and dopamine comes from proteins, right? So it comes from proteins. And the two key proteins or amino acids that make proteins that improve serotonin and dopamine are the amino acids tryptophan or 5-hydroxy, more specifically closer to it, 5-hydroxytryptophan, and tyrosine. So these are proven to increase serotonin and dopamine with little, if any, side effects. Again, the benefit of that protein that we use, this whey protein, is it has the highest amounts per serving of tryptophan and phenylalanine tyrosine. So it has an appetite suppressing role as well as suppressing insulin. At the same time, if we still have an individual who is extremely low in serotonin and dopamine, we actually measure it in our body chemistry, and their symptoms are so significant, we actually use a product called Tyrotrip, which I designed, which is the two specific amino acids that improve serotonin and dopamine, which is proven to increase and improve sleep, mood, energy. And one of the first things that goes when you improve serotonin and dopamine, if you have to with Tyrotrip, is sugar cravings. Now, so many people come in to see me and say, well, I know how to improve serotonin and dopamine. That's why I'm taking all these drugs, all these reuptake inhibitors, classically known as the antidepressant drugs. The irony is that one of the most powerful and common causes of low brain serotonin and dopamine is these drugs. This explains how these antidepressant drugs increase weight. So what the drugs do is they don't make new serotonin dopamine. That comes from the amino acids. They actually block the reuptake and mobilize stored amounts, which are then rapidly excreted. A woman said to me the other day, this pill made me gain 50 pounds. I said, no, the pill caused you to lose serotonin dopamine, and then up went your appetite and your sugar cravings, and food made you gain 60 pounds. Now, so the pharmaceutical rule is any drug or substance which mobilizes neurotransmitters depletes them. This depletion phenomena is why some of the side effects of antidepressant medications are like this. Again, I talked about weight gain, sugar cravings, low energy, insomnia. So actually antidepressant drugs suppress stage 3, stage 4 sleeps. So they shorten those good sleeps. Low libido. That's very common with most of them. Again, I had a gentleman come to me and said, you know, I'm on Paxil and I have no sex drive. None. I go, oh, is that a problem for you? He goes, no, my wife's on it too. Sad, but real. What have we become as a society? Low anxiety, withdrawal syndrome, terrible withdrawal syndromes. My God, some of these stories are horrific. Actually, I was punching in withdrawal syndrome in Google and in the U.S. Currently, there's almost 6,000 lawsuits in the U.S. just from withdrawal syndrome from Paxil. Suicide, terrible statistics showing that the highest risk of suicide is in the first 2 weeks of the initiation of antidepressant drugs. So someone that's initiating these drugs is at a tremendously higher risk in the first 2 weeks of initiation. We might say, oh, okay, well, this is acceptable because, you know, there's a benefit and we have to accept the risk. You know, those ads on TV where, you know, everyone's dancing around and but it may cause blah, 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 right? But when the Journal of the American Medical Association, so one of, again, the most prestigious journals, looked at a meta-analysis of all the studies on antidepressants. So what the meta-analysis is where they just look at every single study that's ever been done, put it in a pile, and say, all right, how good are antidepressant drugs? Here's what they found. 2010, in mild to moderate depression, antidepressant medication does not help better than placebo. Any drug or substance that depletes or mobilizes will deplete. This will include recreational substances such as caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol. So you have to be cautious with these as well because we get addicted to these things because they mobilize dopamine and serotonin. So the next thing we'll talk about is micronutrient deficiencies. Again, looking at all these things on the right side that affect. So the first thing to understand is the deficiency of any nutrient has been proven to affect neurotransmitter function and brain function. Period. Proven. Things that I see are the most common. Iron. So iron deficiency is very common, proven to affect brain function. One of the challenges I see is range problems. Medically, doctors may not be alarmed till your ferritin is below 20. On the other hand, for mitochondrial function, performance, endurance, you might need as much as 80. In fact, what the normal amount of ferritin that's considered normal is 80. In studies where they've actually taken women, these were done in women, and they had a ferritin of 20, they increased it to 40, their endurance on a treadmill went up by 50% just with that one thing. How many people exercise and work so hard to do all this work, yet something as simple as iron is sabotaging their results? Iron will predict the ability of your ability to build muscle. When I've worked with professional or Olympic athletes, we try and get their irons up to 100 to 150. That's kind of the amounts that you're looking for. Magnesium, one of my all-time favorite minerals. So magnesium is the most commonly deficient mineral. So magnesium is found in green stuff. Magnesium is a central molecule in chlorophyll. So if you're not eating enough green stuff, and of course what's the required amount of foods to get vegetable servings to get your magnesium is approximately 6 to 8 servings. Very rarely do I see people with that amount of green stuff per day. So what is magnesium important for? It's important for insulin regulation. It's important for serotonin dopamine function. It has a alpha-2 gamma receptor effect. All that means fancily is it calms down nerves. It's very important for bone density. It's important for cholesterol. Even improving magnesium in one controlled study reduces cholesterol. And actually many more. There's over 500 processes dependent on magnesium. So very common deficiency. Vitamin D. Vitamin D, thankfully, is now in the news more and more. So more people know about it. It's kind of one of these things that I've been fighting for 20 or 30 years, and every time I give a bit of vitamin D, oh, it's dangerous. If the blood levels, currently we have 800 studies of vitamin D. If we achieved a minimum blood level of 100 nanomolar per liter in the blood, in a current meta-analysis, again looking at everything, we would save 40,000 Canadian lives per year from cancer and heart disease alone. That doesn't count the benefits of vitamin D on bone, on hormone balance, on serotonin dopamine. We have good controlled studies on vitamin D intervention in people with seasonal affective disorder. So vitamin D works better than antidepressants, which you can see isn't a big deal, right? But it's certainly safer and has these side effects of preventing death from other causes. And to get, on average, you need a minimum of 2,000 units of vitamin D, but over 25% of the population actually needs even more vitamin D than 2,000 units. That's why we recommend testing. Essential fatty acids. Again, these are one of the essential fatty acids. By that, I generally refer to things that are found in fish. If you get the cell membrane up to 6 to 8%, we have significant benefits in depression, in controlled double-blind studies. Again, you now are in the know. You know when someone says it works better than antidepressants, you're not impressed anymore. It improves insulin regulation by about as much as 20, and insulin function by as much as 25%. It's been proven to be effective in bipolar disorder, essential fatty acids, and many more. Zinc. Zinc is the brain nutrient. Again, it's one of the nutrients in attention deficit disorder in kids that we have good controlled double-blind studies saying zinc makes kids' ADD go away. Why aren't we doing this? It's pretty frustrating. When we would try a drug which has a risk of, death is one of the side effects. That's not good when you should be using zinc or essential fatty acids, which have also been studied and proven in kids. Mitochondrial function. We do tests that look at how energy is being burned in the brain. And we see, I think with the chronic high insulin and the stressors and all that we see impairments in how our actually bodies and brains burn energy. And we have to be conscious of these mitochondrial nutrients like coenzyme Q10, the B vitamins, and antioxidants. And again, it goes on. But the point I'm making is that these things are very important. And not only are they important, when it comes to serotonin and dopamine, what are our alternatives? And our alternative seems to be pharmaceuticals, when we're not looking at these things which have profound evidence in their benefit. Food intolerances. This is interesting. The average gluten intolerance in Canada takes 14 years to diagnose from the time the first symptom is presented to the time that someone actually finds out, and someone discovers that, hey, taking gluten, which is the main protein in wheat, can make a difference in your diet. It can cause mental health problems, ranging from ADD, schizophrenia, depression, mood disorders, bipolar disorders, you name it. It's been proven to be caused by people who have an intolerance to gluten. Of course it can cause bowel problems. But as many as 30%, so many people just are diagnosed with irritable bowel, but 30% of people with gluten intolerance don't even have bowel symptoms. It can destroy your bones. That's actually how I got into this many, many, many years ago. My mother actually had such severe bone loss that she would break bones just from coughing. And going through the traditional medical tests, and we know that gluten can destroy bones, it came back negative. And this is when I actually went to grand rounds at the Civic Hospital to the leading expert of celiac disease gluten in Canada. And I'm sitting there and he says, oh yes, the tests that we do in the blood for celiac or gluten intolerance are only 30% sensitive. And you're going, what? What? That means you miss 70% of people who would respond to a gluten-free diet. He goes, yeah, that's unacceptable. So in the US, there is more advanced labs that are doing the antibody right in the stool, where they find, if you find an antibody, you get with a 90% confidence that removing gluten you've caught it. And I just put this last thing because what is going on? Is the incidence of gluten intolerance increasing? Is it? I don't know. The reason I bring this up, and we talk about the environment, is you know, when I was growing up, I didn't know or ever heard of a kid that had a puffer or had an allergy to food that could kill him, right? How many people are of my generation, right? Do you ever remember seeing kids who could die of peanut allergies or no, I never heard of this stuff. Nowadays, you go to the schools, or my kids are, and there's like they have a special fridge just for all the EpiPens and all the different you know, warning stickers and red light, you know, all this different stuff. You can't bring them. I don't think my kids have brought a peanut near the school in 15 years. What is going on? We haven't changed our genes. We say it's genetic. You have to have a genetic predisposition, right, to have these reactions. We haven't changed our genes in one generation. Are my genes that bad? What is happening is in the field of genetics, is that we know that with all that human genome project and understanding all the genes, that only 1% of our genes are working at any one time. 1%. And 99% of the genes we used to call junk DNA. We don't know what it's for. Must be junk. But nature always has a smart way of biting us in the butt. What we're finding out is that nutrition and the environment tells what genes, the junk DNA decides what genes to turn on and off. So 25% of the population has a genetic possibility to have a gluten intolerance. We used to think that only 1% was having it expressed, but it's your junk DNA that's influenced by all these stressors in the environment that turns it on or off. So these things that we're talking about are very important when we come to these diseases in kids and adults that we don't understand are growing, but have genetic consequences. But absolutely, what it means is that what you eat and what you do changes your own DNA. When they say it's in your genes, of course it's in your genes, but what you do alters genetic expression. Exercise is like one of the perfect pills, right? It decreases insulin, it decreases your cortisol, and actually increases your serotonin and dopamine. It's a little bit depressing if you think about how many calories you burn exercising, you know, and a pound of fat is like 4,000 calories, and you're thinking, man, I just worked like so hard, and I burned 300 calories, and 1 pound of fat is 4,000 calories. Whoa, that's a long way to go. So why is exercise so effective? Because it increases brain serotonin and dopamine. People that exercise more don't eat as much. Now, it's even more interesting. Duke University did a study on a 3-part study in depression. They had the exercise, they had the placebo group, the exercise group, the drug group, the antidepressant drugs, the reuptake inhibitors, and the reuptake inhibitors and the exercise. So they combined them. So guess what they found? Exercise was the best for depression. The actual, when people exercised and took the drug, the actual drug seemed to negate the effects of exercise. Now, interestingly, I put this down. It's just kind of like the diet things. You know, do I tell someone you should exercise? Do I tell someone you should go on a diet? No, you don't need years of, how many years of medical education you need to know? They say you should lose weight and you should exercise. Most of the people I deal with may not have the energy to exercise. Most of the people who I deal with have gone through so many runs through different diets that they don't need someone to tell them to lose weight. One of the first exciting parts for me when I deal with someone is, you know what? I'm exercising. You don't need to tell someone. I got the energy. I'm moving now. It's so much, I feel so good. I'm starting to move. Or the time when I say, listen, your body chemistry is balanced. You know what? If you eat less now and exercise, you're going to lose weight. And they're almost like, it's almost like a wonderful revelation. You're like a normal person now because you've wrestled your insulin down. You're dealing with the cravings. Now, just go and do it. And they do it. You don't have to tell someone to do it. They want to do it. And people have, it's almost like some of these poor people feel that they're just weak people. If only they were stronger, they could wrestle these chemistries down, these low serotonin, dopamine. And they can't until you actually fundamentally support it. And then they can deal with the issues. And that's why I like what I do, because it's so nice to see that, where I always say it, well, now you're in the driver's seat. You're not in the back seat with somebody else's car bouncing around, falling off the road. If you do something right, you're going to feel better. If you do something wrong, you're going to feel worse. Mind-body connection is also very important when it comes to serotonin, dopamine. So beyond just exercise, meditation was proven to increase serotonin, dopamine. We actually have meditation boot camps run by a licensed practitioner in meditation, very helpful. Counseling, of course, there's lots of people that do counseling that helps deal with stress and stress management, prayer, finding your happy place, all these different things. We use a product, if we're using, again, as a chemist, I like to use things to intervene. The product I use is a product called phosphogabamin, which contains theanine and phosphatidylserine. And theanine is a wonderful little protein because it was found in green tea and discovered because how come people get so relaxed drinking green tea when it has caffeine in it, which we know has all these issues. And they found that theanine is this wonderful protein that calms cortisol and calms the adrenal system. Very relaxing. Next, we'll just quickly go through hormone balance. Now, I guess I gained one of the benefits of being older is that I have 30 years of experience in looking at hormone issues. And I guess, what I've observed with hormones is hormone extremism through all the years. And there is this landmark study, which many people are familiar with or not, but it's called the Women's Health Initiative in 2002. And prior to then, and if you're not experienced, but what happened prior to 2002 was every woman who walked into, who was perimenopausal or menopausal or after hysterectomy, who walked near a doctor's office, you didn't even have to get close to it, was offered Premarin and Provera, which are a horse's estrogen and a synthetic progestin. So every woman was told that this was good for them. So you should get on it. The problem is that 7 out of 10 women couldn't take it due to serious side effects, from breast tenderness, migraines, bloating, distension and abdominal pains, everything under the sun, more anxiety, less sleep. So 7 out of 10 women weren't taking it. But they would hide that. They would actually, because every time they went to the doctor, they said, are you taking it? Oh, yes. Because they would just keep being told, keep taking it. In spite of the fact that most women couldn't take it, in spite of the fact that there were serious problems. I would go to conferences prior to 2002, and there'd be a presenter saying, yes, I know, here's the studies on these hormones in cancer. 25 out of 25 studies say there's an increase of cancer. I'm going, oh, but that's not significant. And you're going, what? 25 out of 25? Well, who's paying you to say something like that? And again, even other studies like the HER study, which was a controlled study, saying, man, there's real problems. We're killing women. And, of course, serious withdrawal problems with Premarin and Provera. I still have women who come to consult with me who are 75. One woman said, if I could get the doctor that gave me this stuff, man, I would, because I can't, I'm 75 and I can't get off this stuff without going into severe withdrawal problems. And she goes, how come? I go, well, the problem is that these doses are so high. It's like being on 10 cups of coffee, and try and get off it. It's hard, right? You don't need 10 cups of coffee, but try and get off it. It can be real withdrawal problems. Then, after the WHI 2002, the pendulum kind of swung. Then they were dangerous for all women. So a woman, this is a real life example, a woman came to me and she said, I had a hysterectomy with my ovaries taken out at age 45, like last year. Prior to then, I had no problems whatsoever. But now, after my hysterectomy, I'm on 7 different medications. She was on an antidepressant, bone density medication, she had anti-cholesterol medication, she'd gained 60 pounds, so she was trying to use weight loss drugs. She had anti-inflammatory drugs. She had sleeping pills. She had a high blood pressure pill. And then she was using vaginal lubricants. And the first question I asked was, well, why have you not considered hormones? Well, because they're dangerous. And I'm going, oh my God, this is a disaster. Hormones would help with all of these issues. And the risk of any one of those issues and the risk of any one of those drugs is higher than hormones alone. So really, finally we have a more rational statement, which is the middle road, which is actually the position statement of the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of Canada. Use the lowest possible dose for the shortest period of time to ease symptoms. That's what we should have been doing all along. Now this mess of a slide is a mess. The reason I bring this up is that what I want to quickly talk about is how your environment and nutrients impact hormone and estrogen metabolism. So that big mess of a slide basically is my nirvana, chemical nirvana. Look at how nutrition affects your hormones. So I could go through that and point out high insulin is one of the biggest messes uppers of your estrogen. Low magnesium affects COMT enzymes, iron, B vitamins, folic acid. If you eat cruciferous vegetables, the broccoli, the cauliflower, the Brussels sprouts, the enhanced 4-methoxy metabolism, you have less risk of cancer. Antibiotics screw up the glucuronidase pathway, so probiotics help you excrete and balance hormones. Omega-3 oils, guess what? They balance estrogen. Antioxidant vitamins and prevent, again, the 2 to 4-methoxy pathways. All the vegetables that you can eat have natural isoflavones, which are natural-based estrogens to balance these things out. Crap, xenoestrogens found in crappy meats and all the chemical-fed stuff. So we have to be aware of that. Vitamin D influences the very hormone receptors. The estrogen progesterone receptor requires vitamin D to function properly. And exercise, again, helps balance hormones. It sort of gives you an understanding where a woman, all women who go from hormones in their 20s are here, to all women in menopause go to hormones down here. And how come some women feel so shitty on the way? Because there's other things that influence hormone balance. So what I'm saying is you can get significant symptom relief without hormones of many of these things. You can improve these symptoms. Plus, by balancing your body chemistry, you actually allow you set the body up to optimize and minimize the function of hormones if and when they're required. And just as a quick note for men, and I like this too because I do see men a lot too, but testosterone levels are also influenced by diet. So all those things that mess up estrogen in women mess up estrogen in men. Men with messed up estrogens who have bigger bellies and are growing breasts, men as we age start looking more like women. As we get more estrogen, it suppresses our effective testosterone. And trust me, men and testosterone is a disaster. It's one of the most commonly missed issues that men are facing. It's starting to see more stuff in the papers. Of course, you got it in the advertisements, guys dancing around, I got testosterone. But it's missed so often it's ridiculous. For example, I have 30-year-old guys who have been treated for years for depression, but no one has never measured their testosterone. And they had the testosterone of a 90-year-old guy, perhaps related to these environmental nutritional issues, right? So the Canadian Neurological Journal in August 2010 states, we are treating a fraction of men with low testosterone, just a fraction of the men with low testosterone. This is despite linkages to cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, diabetes. So men with low testosterone will grow a belly, and a man with a belly will have low testosterone. Sexual function, sarcopenia, which is muscle wasting, and emotional well-being and the metabolic syndrome, which you've been talking about. Testosterone even helps prostate function. It's not good if you have cancer, but men with lower testosterone are contrary to what is the sort of known out there, actually may reduce testosterone. Higher levels may actually reduce risk of prostate cancer. If you had 10,000 women who weren't sleeping, your risk of death from all the causes goes up by 12%. Quite dramatic compared to a 1.3 deaths. If the woman is gaining weight due to some of these issues, the weight gain and hip-to-waist ratio is 40 to 60 times more risky than that risk ratio. Depression increases risk of death from all causes many times higher than 1.3. Osteoporosis, which hormones help, is the number 3 cause of death in women. What about the quality of relationships? One study showed that if a woman has severe vaginal dryness and doesn't have intimate relations, that affects, again, longevity of both partners in the relationship. And what about general quality of life? Hot flashes, night sweats. Those things have to be measured into it. And then if you're trying to use a whole bunch of drugs to deal with those issues, what are the risks versus hormones? And again, under the osteoporosis as well, I'm putting down this website. Actually, I do writing for this woman who does a wonderful, she's the top physiotherapist who tells women what are the exercises that work for bone density. And she has that website. So, and I do work for her on drugs and and again, one of our pet peeves is how come we're giving all these things like these biphosphonates when we don't, far beyond guidelines, and we're not dealing with the benefits and evidence of exercise. And then the last one is oral, last two things, oral versus transdermal hormones. So basically, the WHI used oral hormones through the mouth. What we've proven is that any estrogen through the skin has no increased risk of blood clots versus hormones taken through the mouth increases risk of blood clots. Furthermore, when you use any hormone through the skin, either a gel, a cream, or a patch, you need 90% less hormone than you would as if you used it by mouth. And the last one, which is something that we deal with all the time, and it's probably, again, Dr. Buckley drives her beyond the bend as well, and all of these things is what I call progestin confusion. So the WHI used synthetic medroxyprogesterone in the study. Now, medroxyprogesterone has proven to increase the risk of breast cancer in all studies. Human identical progesterone has never increased the risk of breast cancer, ever, in any study. So it's quite significantly different. Furthermore, progesterone has other benefits. In the HER study, it lowered progesterone. It helps a woman sleep. It has mood stabilizing effect. It prevents mood swings. It helps with bone density. So, versus Provera, which has some of the opposite effects. So they are very different molecules, yet they are used interchangeably by doctors. And how many times have I had a doctor come to me, a patient say, my doctor doesn't believe in bioidentical hormones, where I'm saying, well, actually, he's giving one. Or he doesn't believe in bioidentical hormones. I'm going, what do you mean? Does that mean he doesn't know about Provera and the science of Provera versus the science of progesterone? That's just bad. Because legitimately, if you gave a woman Provera and not progesterone, you would have a very good lawsuit in terms of why the heck should that have been done. So ultimately, what we do is, at Nutrichem, is we look at all of these factors and how they affect stress. That's it. And what we use is science. We use the clinical lab to measure all these things, to try and figure out how to make, what issues are relevant in that global context. And really what the information is that what we're able to do is, as a compounding pharmacy, is what we do is make individual solutions. So, and that's based on consultation. We actually have run, if we think people really could use some dietary counseling, we have Nora, who's an amazing nutritionist, run pre-diabetic boot camps, gluten-free boot camps. Again, I talked about the stress management seminars, the osteoporosis work that I do with Margaret Martin at hermelioguide.com. And ultimately, what I tell people is, what you get away with when you're 20 is not what you get away with when you're 40. Your enzymes are not at the same efficiency. You know, we can almost do anything when we're 20. But when you're 40 and 50, we don't get away with anything. And there may be outside stressors that you won't be able to change, right? We may not be able to change our kids, our spouse, our partner, our jobs. You know, there's maybe nothing we can do about these things. But the food, the water, the exercise, the hormones, the essential nutrients for structure and function, these are the inside stressors, and the most profound, and you can change them. You can alter them. I had a guy come in who is a big executive and says, I have a lot of stress in my work. And I work all the time. I'm working. It's so stressful. I have lots of this going on, all these problems. Why do you work? Well, well, for money, you know, better life, early, money for my retirement. And you're having all these problems with energy, mood, sleep, depression, libido, drive. And what does a good life look like? And he stops. I go, no, what are you working for? Isn't that what he goes, you're right. Aren't I right? What is he working for? He has, if you're not focusing on these things, first of all, are you going to get there? Right? And if you're not doing it today, what is all this about? Because even in his case, once he did it and calmed down, then he was able to cope and have more resilience, and he had the energy, the mood, all the wonderful things that he needed to deal with those stressors. So by looking after your body chemistry, you will have less stress, live longer, and be happier. And thanks for listening to me tonight.